Estamos con la profesora de archivística Luciana Duranti del programa de estudios en maestría y doctorado de la Universidad de British Columbia en Vancouver, y tenemos este encuentro hoy para hablar sobre su carrera como profesora e investigadora. So, Luciana, it's been 21 years since you founded Inter-Pares Research Project. So I have two questions there. One is, what makes you think that the world or the archival science needed something like Inter-Pares and lead you to create that project? And the second one is, now, 21 years after that, what do you think or do you consider that are the main contributions or discoveries of these research projects? I know it's perhaps a big question, but it's attempting to two essential things. What makes you create Inter-Pares, and after all the time, what is the most important things that Inter-Pares have given to the archival community?
Well, in 1997, I had just completed what is known as the MAS DoD project, which was the development of a record-keeping system for the Department of Defense of the United States, which resulted in the federal standards of the United States for keeping records. And it was a required standard up to a few years ago. Now it is a recommended standard for record keeping. But of course, once we had achieved the perfect creation of the perfect digital record, and it's the proper maintenance and use of it, the question came, okay, now how do we keep this material for the future? And at the time, there was no system of preservation of any kind. So I thought, okay, this is not the work we can do on our own. We need to have an interdisciplinary team composed of records managers and archivists, of course, but computer scientists, computer engineers, lawyers, legal experts of all kind. And we have to figure it out across countries in a number of different contexts. So I contacted colleagues in 6 continents, and I put together a team that for the first time met in June 1998 in Washington, D.C. at College Park. And we, around the table, we debated what we wanted to do, why we were together, and what was our agenda. And among us, of course, there were also private corporations like Pfizer, pharmaceutical industry, a number of industries. And so as I went through around the table, asking each person what they wanted from this research, what we wanted to do, one person on my right, whose name will not be made, said, well, this is not going to be another MAS project. Everybody does the work, but then only the University of British Columbia gets the reputation. And I said, no. This is going to be among peers, Inter-Pares. And then I said, okay, why don't we make an acronym of it? And it became International Research on Permanent Authentic Records in Electronic Systems. And that became the purpose of the project. So in the first iteration of the project, what we really wanted to do was to try and find methodologies for the authentic preservation of records created in office systems and databases. So primarily government and corporations records, because that's what was created in a digital environment at the time.
The one that had the resources for it.
Exactly. And at that point, I think the most important product of that research was conceptual, was actually the theory of what a digital record is, and the theory of what authenticity was, and of what the metadata for authenticity were, for identity, for integrity, etc. And then once the project was completed, we figured it out, well, but now every activity in the world is starting to produce digital records. We have electroacoustic music. We have theater using digital technology. We even had dance. I remember some of our greatest researchers were choreographers and dancers, because while choreography had been an oral activity up to that point, with the digital environment, they were actually capable of representing it and of producing the steps of every dance as it had to be. So we said, okay, why don't we expand all of this and we move into the arts and the sciences in addition to government? And that was Interpares 2. And what Interpares 2 did, which was particularly relevant, was to create the chain of preservation model, which basically identified all the steps and all the products at each step, all the outputs
going to the essence
of preservation that would work in any environment. And we tested it through a variety of environment, in the arts, in the sciences, in government, in corporations. I think that the most important product of Interpares 2 was the chain of preservation model. But at the same time, what we did that I think had the biggest impact on the world was to create the guidelines for records creators. Or now you create the records in a way that they can be preserved, and the guidelines for records preservers.
Going to the point where the records are created.
So actually, we gave these pamphlets for free to everybody.
That's also a value, a great value.
Our assumption was these are needed by people who do not have a preservation infrastructure. That is, these are not needed by archives or national archives or provincial archives. These are needed by the office of the dentist, who has to preserve the x-rays forever that are now digital, and all kinds of small organizations that cannot afford records manager or archivist. Well, we were wrong. The biggest users of the guidelines for records creation and records preservations were governments.
Oh, yes.
And for records preservation were archival institutions. And that was the most successful thing we ever produced, that continues to be printed out on a regular basis.
And always for free.
For free. Nothing in our products is copyright, because we want everybody to use the material as they wish. They can copy entirely the text of our reports. We don't care, as long as it is useful to them. The other thing we produced in Interpares 2 that was very useful were little pamphlets that every archives could have on its desk when people would come in on how you donate your digital material, how you keep your email. How can you donate your email?
You're asking them people.
No, telling them how actually they would be able to give to archives their material. How they were able to keep it and maintain it so that it could be given to archival institutions. So we did lots of dissemination of knowledge among the public in general.
It's a common practice on
right?
Interpares.
Yes. And then at the end of Interpares 2, when all the products were out, the second book was out, all the models were out, at that point, the National Archives of the United States was building on the basis of the chain of preservation model its electronic records archives. The big system of preservation of NARA is Interpares 2. It is Interpares 2,
okay.
Right? And at that point, we got feedback from all over the world saying, well, that's all good and well, but in order to implement all your recommendations, we need money, we need resources, we need people who are knowledgeable. How can you serve in any way those who have nothing? So we came up with Interpares 3, which was about how you scale down everything that we recommended so that every small organization, every one-person institution can actually manage the digital record. And Interpares 3 was extremely important because it produced an enormous amount of case studies and recommendations for the lonely archivist out there and for the people who had to do and try the best with whatever they had. It's actually one of the places where people who have no resources go to find ways of doing things. So it is one of the most accessed sites ever.
In fact, it's very well ranked.
Yeah, and then we thought, okay, we're done, right? And then the cloud came up.
Okay.
And then we said, all right, now we have developed all the ideal system for preserving records in-house, for having dark repositories, for dealing with digital records from creation to preservation. I think that is the most important contribution of Interpares, is really to convince people that to preserve records, you have to start before you design the system for creating records. But then we thought we were done, but no, we weren't, because then the cloud came about and people started to put things in the cloud. And we figured it out immediately what all the issues were from a legal point of view, from an ownership point of view, from an availability, completely different point of view, perspectives, but it was a big thing. In the process, our team developed from 20 people to 200 to 500. One of the reasons why the team grew so much is the pervasiveness of the issues. Everybody had the problems. But the other reason is that we had lots of students working on the research, right?
Okay.
All the students in our master's programs, lots of professors worked on Interpares, and their students were all involved in collecting data, in analyzing data, in writing reports, in presenting reports, in speaking at conferences, etc. And all these students eventually graduated, and they started working as records managers, as archivists, and they started having a career and being in charge of entire archives. And then they became all researchers in Interpares. So basically, all those who were research assistants became co-investigators over time. And the group kept growing. Also, the number of institutions participating kept growing, because in the beginning, it was mostly archival institutions, but then it became all kinds of institutions, and most international institutions have been part of the fourth phase of Interpares, like UNESCO, NATO, the Red Cross, the atomic energy, you name it, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, etc., because we shared all the same issues. You know, around halfway through the life of Inter Pares, our funding agency, the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada, during one of its visits, because they control us all the time. They look at not just at how we spend money, but how we are held accountable. Seriously, we have to present all our work, and they send group of researchers to look upon us and to watch us and what we do. And one of the things that was prominent in their report was none of the Inter Pares researchers ever says I. They all say we. And I think that was the spirit of Inter Pares. It was not just their belonging in Inter Pares, but their work belonging to them. Everybody felt that that was their work, was not the work of somebody else. It did belong to them. And it was a large society. Now, I think much of the success of Inter Pares is due to the fact that instead of putting together a small group of researchers, experts in the area, developing something that then had to be sold to the public at large, we took the public at large all together, and we together built something that didn't need to be sold because we were sold already. We actually created everything together according to, the other thing, sorry if I am totally incoherent, but the other thing that I think was important here is that we shared the language and we shared the culture. The key thing we did from the very beginning, from 98, and we kept maintaining it and developing it over time, was the terminology database. So the terminology database has a glossary, which are all the words contained in the Inter Pares documents.
So everyone speaks the same language.
All the words there with the definition used for Inter Pares purposes. Then the dictionary, the same words, but how they're used in each of the disciplines that contribute. So we compare file in archival science with file in computer science, right?
Of course.
So for every word, there is the meaning in each of the disciplines involved in the research. And then the ontologies, which is the relationship among all the concepts, right? And that thing has been a living body of knowledge translated in multiple languages, which actually generated the MAT, which is the multilingual archival terminology database of the ICA, of the International Council on Archives. Well, that's our work. MAT is our work. And it has served the entire archival records management community. But the one of Inter Pares serves beyond that, the computer science community, the electronic engineer community, now the artificial intelligence community that is coming in. So it's like we speak the same language, and when we don't, we know exactly what the others mean within their context.
From different points of views.
From different disciplines, and we understand each other. And that was the first thing we did, actually. We started building that, but we also created a document in Inter Pares 1 that explained all the concepts, and we would say, this is not right or wrong. This is the way we are going to use the concept. As we all have to agree that when we say this, that's what we mean.
And that's how we keep it.
It doesn't matter if it is wrong. It's a way of communicating. That's a communication methodology, right? So then Inter Pares 4 will be finished on the 31st of March 2020. And we have now applied for Interpares 5,
And we will see what's coming
which
from there.
is about artificial intelligence.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
so the idea is this is Archives 4.0. And, and the idea is the complexity of the records that we are creating is so unbelievable that there is not human mind that can control all of this. And the amount of records that we are creating is beyond belief. So we need artificial intelligence tools to help us with the retention and disposition schedules, with archival description, with all kinds of archival functions that can be at least 60% automated. Not completely, because we know that artificial intelligence has no ethics and no morals, right?
And that's very important.
And the most important thing is societal values.
Of course.
And that is important to us. So again, we have a team as large as the previous one, to which we are adding experts in machine learning and all sorts of artificial intelligence tools. And we hope to be funded because the world needs us. And you say, well, why? Well, the thing is that there is really no other project out there that deals with this kind of thing. And I think that the reason is not that there is no need for it. I think that the reason is that anybody who has something to say important about this would come in Interpares.
And will come to
And
to
so we keep talking with everybody who has something to say. And we are, the other thing is we are not like political current or whatever. We are open to any view. We are open to experiment with anything. It's just that we want to solve this issue now forever, for today, of how to keep today's record.
The main thing I was telling you minutes ago, that the thing on I think on Interpares and on you and on your view is that there are no general answers for anything. Everything must be specific and ad hoc and to solve specific situations in context.
Absolutely.
Always in context.
Absolutely.
That I think is one of the biggest learnings I can get, and I hope the students also can get from Interpares. I think the time is getting over. I would like to keep talking to you a long time, but the interview has a limited time. So thank you very much for being here, and we will wait very much for hearing the results of the next Interpares. That is Interpares 5.
5.
Okay, but we will wait for it.
Thank you.
Finger crossed
Thank
for
you.
it. Okay, no, thanks to you again for being here.